A very good afternoon to all our LinkedIn Live viewers. Thank you all for joining us. We have a very interesting conversation ahead of us today, and we have with us Jenny Costello, Executive Director, Ethical Tea Partnership, ETP. Now, ETP is a front-runner organization that has been working extensively and intensively in the tea sector across the globe. They've been championing and spearheading the responsibility agenda, and of course, that spans over a wide variety and a wide range of topics, and one of which is the living wages. And we'll get into that in further details a little later in our conversation. This LinkedIn Live that we have planned for you all today is sort of meant to be a teaser or a precursor, if I may say so, to a more nuanced and a more engaging discussion that will take place at the 3-day CRB annual conference, which is scheduled to take place from the 2nd of November to the 4th of November. And both ETP and CRB will be hosting a session on the living wage in Assam tea sector on the 4th of November. So just in case you haven't already registered yourself for the conference, please do so. And please do so also for this particular session that we will have on the 4th of November. And now, without any further ado, I'd like to quickly introduce Jenny Costello to all of you and kickstart our conversation today. So Jenny leads the operations and the strategy at the ETP, including overseeing the delivery of programs, business pilots, and policy work in 70 producing origins in Africa and Asia. Her focus is on driving long-term systemic change across 3 themes in tea. These are economics, equality, and environment. With a specialist focus on the food and the agriculture sector, Jenny has built a varied and an extensive career in delivering sustainable development through multi-stakeholder partnerships. Jenny lived in Singapore for 11 years, where her passion for sustainable and inclusive agricultural value chains was nurtured. Whilst in Singapore, she held the position of Director, Country Partnerships at Grow Asia, a World Economic Forum initiative focused on sustainable agriculture in ASEAN. Prior to Grow Asia, Jenny enjoyed a number of consulting roles where she provided sustainability advisory to several reputed organizations. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us today for this LinkedIn Live session.
Yeah, thank you, Nandini. It's lovely to be here. I'm really looking forward to working together and learning more from the CRB and how it can influence ETP's work. So thank you for the introduction as well.
Thank you. Our pleasure. So I'm going to just start with a warm-up question, Jenny. So I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about ETP's work, the vision, the mission, and what your approach has been. So if you could share that with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I mean, you did touch on it a little bit in the introduction, but I'll just kind of elaborate on that a little bit. If I start with what ETP's vision is, and it's for a thriving tea industry, and by thriving, we mean prosperous and profitable, and a thriving tea industry that is socially just and environmentally sustainable. And though that social justice and environmental sustainability, we can talk about a little bit more. But essentially, ETP is a membership organization, and our members are the companies who are packers of tea, so they buy tea and blend it and pack it, retailers and traders of tea. Now, their membership funds a lot of our activities, and our focus is on driving that systemic change that you talked about. So we kind of mobilize that funding, convene coalitions of companies that want to see improvements in tea, and we focus our activities on driving improvements in economics, which includes the living wage agenda and living incomes. We also look at equality. Predominantly that is on gender, but also we recognize there are young people in tea communities who deserve equal opportunities, and that includes health and safety as well. And then finally, the environmental sustainability piece is a little bit more widely understood, and that's addressing climate change and environmental sustainability. Now, those are quite broad areas of focus, and we deliver that through a range of activities that we refer to as our 3 Ps. That's our projects and programs. That's 1 P. Our second P is business pilots. So we're really looking at the role of business in creating positive change. And the third P is the policy work that we do. And that's really a reference to the legislative environment, the enabling environment that we need to address to create this lasting change. My final point, Nandini, would be really just that we operate in 7 tea producing countries, as you mentioned, Africa and Asia. And of course, you know, we couldn't talk about tea if we didn't talk about India. So that, I think, is why we'll be participating in the CRB.
Right, fantastic. Thank you so much for that overview, Jenny. I think that's a whole lot of things packed in there, and fantastic to know that there's, as a front-runner organization, that there's so much that is being done to the, in the tea sector, particularly in India, given that it's one of the oldest industry and of great significance, to this region.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So that brings me to my second question. Gets a little tricky from here. So we have, as you know, the theme for this year's conference is prioritizing nature and people in business to create measurable impacts. And, I'd like to understand from you, how do you relate specific work that ETP, you sort of describe the work that ETP is doing, and how would you sort of relate this to the theme that we have this year for the conference?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and I think there's some theory that I want to reference first before I talk really about the practice, and then there's some examples outside tea, but then I'll talk about examples within tea. So really, when you're talking about nature and people, the theory for me is that they're inextricable. That if you look after people, you will, by definition or by default, look after nature, because we can't exist without it. That's the theory. You don't have to look too far to realize that actually the practice is very different, unfortunately. And there's a lot of myopic or short-term behavior that's degrading environment, and people are suffering as a result. I think one of the really interesting concepts is when an organization starts to do a bit of stakeholder mapping, ask yourself, where is nature or where is the environment on that stakeholder map? Because we identify the government people we want to talk to, the communities, the NGOs and so on, but where's nature on that stakeholder map? And how do you take into consideration the needs and protection of the environment? And then just this international not tea example that I wanted to talk about is the fascinating move by Patagonia recently. Now, global clothing brand, obviously anybody who knows that organization knows that they're founded on some really ethical, sustainable principles. But what they did recently was made a commitment to put all profits towards an NGO called the Holdfast Collective that exclusively focuses on fighting climate change. Now, I love this example. I think it's really bold, and obviously there was quite a lot of coverage about it. I would acknowledge that there are some kind of enabling conditions for Patagonia to do that. Firstly, the owning family are billionaires. They can afford to give away their business like this. The organization is profitable. We don't see that to the same extent in tea. There are many tea companies struggling. So yeah, it's a lovely example. It's a shining best case example. But let's talk about tea, and bringing it down onto a much more modest and ground level, grassroots scale. What we're doing at ETP in India, first of all, is we're doing that listening thing. We're doing the prioritizing people, the participatory approach, as we call it. And one of our programs that we have in Assam is where we create a governance structure on tea estates where it's not just the management company making decisions. We build a model where marginalized voices bring to that forum their priorities and concerns. Now, nobody is feeling the effects of climate change more than people who are growing any food or vegetables or tea. And so if you're including their voices, nature by extension is being included in those management discussions. So that's we call it our plantation community empowerment program. And we piloted it for a few years in Assam, and we're expanding that and scaling it up to many more estates. And the results we see from that are fantastic. You know, it's the principle is quite simply listen to the people who are feeling the reality of what's happening in nature, and that influences management plans. Another very kind of intuitive example we have is at the minute in Assam, where we're exploring what we can do on access to water and sanitation. So at the minute we've got a call for proposals out for consultants who can help understand just what we can do to give tea communities access to clean, safe water. And you know, that's a natural resource. It's a requirement for all humans. And yet we see in some parts of Assam, tea workers are not able to access fresh water. There is just one other thing, Nandini, I wanted to kind of share with you. We are really keen that whenever we pilot or implement programs and initiatives in one area, that we consider how we can implement it or transfer it to other regions. So if I talk about two examples in Africa at the minute, we partnered with the UK FCDO, used to be DFID, and they funded some research into understanding the impact of climate change on tea workers and particularly women. And that research found that really, you know, those predictions and forecasts about who will feel the impact of climate change most those forecasts are coming to bear. And female tea workers are really feeling the impact of climate change. And that's a huge issue. It's also a huge opportunity for the tea industry to address those challenges. So we'll be publishing that research shortly. But I think that can be transferred, that awareness, that impact. We should explore what that means in Asia as well. And the final very positive example we have, we're conceptualizing in Africa, is a model called Payment for Ecosystem Services, where we're developing a value chain approach that rewards the farmers for adopting climate smart practices. So within that, and we're specifically, where possible, empowering women farmers to do this. So there's a gender dimension to this program. There's a prosperity, increased incomes dimension to this program. And the end goal is that the farming methods are protecting the environment. So coming back to my first point, people and nature are inextricably linked. It's just, we have to be really mindful that the voiceless stakeholder that is nature is included in our thinking and our planning.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jenny. I think that's so superbly put, you know, and the fact that you know, sort of emphasized on that, you know, people and nature are, you know, sort of interconnected, and, you know, the impacts cannot be looked at in silos. So, you know, and that's sort of a comprehensive sort of a view is important, you know, to sort of have that percolated down the value chain, and so that, you know, everybody sort of understands this and then kind of determines the priorities. So fantastic.
Yeah, I think, Nandini, just to build on that, I do feel that, you know, food is a natural product. Food and beverages are a natural product. And it's just so short term, so short-sighted to think that climate change is happening over there, it's not going to affect us. It's really short-sighted. And, you know, we're going to feel the impact, disrupted supply chains, lower quality food. And you know, it's a ticking time bomb, to be quite frank, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, couldn't sort of agree with you anymore. I mean, the pandemic, of course, has been a wake-up call. I mean, we've seen, you know, impacts. We've seen how, you know, some of these disruptions have adversely impacted communities, regions, economies. So we're clearly feeling it. And, you know, it's about time that, you know, these are sort of taken on these issues head on. So thanks once again. Yeah. All right, I'm coming to my last question, Jenny, which is, sort of getting into the specifics. So we are, as you know, we are hosting a session on living wage in the Assam's tea sector, challenges and possibilities in the current Indian economic context. And I'd like you to sort of, delve a little deeper on into this, the concept of living wages. What do you think? How is the discourse sort of evolving? What are, some developments that you see, some insights that you can share with us on this topic?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, Nandini, let's just call it what it is. Living wage is probably one of the most complex issues that we have in tea or in any sector. It's not a simple case of paying more at the consumer end, because it doesn't always reach the workers. And just to be clear, what we mean by living wage is that it's a wage that enables the worker to have a basic, decent standard of living. This is not a kind of flash lifestyle. This is the kind of basics for people to live. What we're really excited about at this living wage session in November is we're going to play the role of convener, because when you talk to anyone about living wage, you'll get more than one opinion on how it can be addressed. So what we're going to do is we're hosting a panel of different stakeholders with different perspectives. We're hoping to get a worker voice there, because of course, it's essential that we hear from the worker what their reality is. We also think the tea producers, the tea growing companies have a very valid, important voice in this discussion. And then, a lot of the blame gets put on the packers. It's interesting to hear what they can do to, as we say, enable a living wage to be paid, and how they can ensure that the money that they're paying, if they're paying a premium, how can they ensure that that reaches the worker? And also, if we can, we'll get some unions in as well, because I think the unions play a really important role in galvanizing and creating a collective voice. We're designing the session at the minute, Nandini, to maximize audience participation. And really for us, this is as much a listening exercise, because we know it's a contentious topic. I mean, often living wage conversations stop at the point of discussing what methodology we're using. So we want to get past that and really consider the legislative environment in Assam, and all of the roles of the different stakeholders. And we do think there is a role for all of those stakeholders I mentioned to create an improved living wage. The other thing I would mention, and I think this is really exciting to be at the CRB conference, is we think there's something we can learn from other sectors. And that's why we're happy to go to Delhi and listen to other sectors share what they can, and what, we'll have SMEs and tea stakeholders, but what other sectors, the garment sector, agriculture, so on, what can we learn from those sectors and take back to tea? And I will just say there are two reports that I want to refer to. We hosted a living wage discussion, a global living wage in tea discussion at our event recently that we co-hosted with IDH. And that report is on our resources pages of our website. So it's called the Team Up report. That was the name of our conference. And there's some really good takeaways from that living wage discussion about collective action and increasing the value of tea. The other report that I want to refer to doesn't exist yet, but it is the report that we'll be writing and producing as an output from this living wage session. So we'll be capturing the insights and the different perspectives and opinions, and hopefully identifying agreed areas of collaboration. So watch out for that report as well.
Fantastic. This looks like a packed session, a very well curated and a very well thought through session. And we're really happy that you've chosen us as the partner sort of to co-host this session. And maybe just reiterate that this is a session that will take place on the 4th of November at 11:45. So our request to all the viewers is to register yourself for this session. And if you are unable to join in person, there's also the option to listen in to the conversation virtually. So both options are available. Please make yourselves available for this rather interesting and insightful discussion that we're going to have. Right. So I think that brings us to the end of the conversation. I think we've pretty much, at least I'm hoping that this has spiked the interest of all our stakeholders enough to get them to the conference. And yeah, thank you so much, Jenny, once again. This has been very illuminating, and I mean, really making me look forward to the discussion, and get further insights on how we can sort of go forward on this agenda. So thank you once again for your time, and yeah, have a good day to all our viewers and to you.
My pleasure, Nandini. Thank you, and thanks to the CRB. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.